Russia has given his reaction to the liberation of Palmyra in Russian. Michael McFaul responded to a tweet by the Russian embassy in the US, writing "Spasiba," meaning thank you in Russian. Right, let's get more thoughts to bring you guests throughout the day to give us their thoughts on what's been achieved and where this is going to go. Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs, joins us now. Hi, sir. Thank you for being with us today. Give us your thoughts on what's happened here. Let's rewind the clock to last May. 10 months ago, it took ISIL only a few days to capture this beautiful city. This time around, there was a heck of a fierce battle over the last week or so, especially over the last couple of days. What does it say about the effectiveness of ISIL? Are they weaker? Are they stronger? They've certainly been beaten back now, but how much of a force to be reckoned with were they?
ISIL is, as you know, metamorphosing. It's turning into more of a terrorist organization than a state or a de facto state. It's losing territory. It's lost 15 to 20% in Iraq and Syria. And this is actually, in a way, a coup de grace for their attempts to hold on to much of northern Syria, because if they lose Palmyra, it means that many of the supply routes will be cut off, and it will be harder for them to sustain themselves in Raqqa and Deir el-Zor, and hopefully eventually even Mosul is going to fall. So I think it's a good sign. It's also a sign that despite the Western propaganda which was trying to claim that Russia is not really interested in countering ISIS, in fact, it is Russian support that yielded this great success in the battlefield. So it makes one wonder what was the purpose of the whole Western propaganda machine, and why was it deliberately underplaying Russia's role and influence in the region. I mean, this seems to be a case where they're not really interested in eliminating ISIS, even though they pay lip service to this, and they say they have a coalition of 60 countries, which is not been able to achieve much. They're celebrating scalps of individual ISIS leaders rather than takeover of strategic and historically significant sites like Palmyra, which is done with Russian support.
Yeah, I started off by saying just now this was a heck of a battle over the last couple of days. At one point, the Syrian government army managed to take over that castle high above there, but then they had a retreat. So they did come under a fair bit of fighting back, a fair bit of resistance. Question is now, are they going to be able to hold on to this strategically important site? Do you think it's done and dusted, or is there going to be another fight back?
The only danger of losing the territory that's regained is if Saudi Arabia and some of the other patrons of jihadist networks in the region like Turkey try to play spoilsport now. Because for them, if the Syrian state is advancing and regaining territory, if Iran seems to be dominant, if Russia seems to be working out its plans, then it's a threat to some of these regional allies of the United States, some of whom are NATO members. So the real threat to me is not so much ISIS as their backers, their clandestine backers, especially Turkey. So I think we need to be watchful, we need to be careful to avoid, because Saudi Arabia just announced that it has launched a 34-member coalition that it's going to try and invade Syria from the north to Turkey. So these are the threats really, because that will spoil the show, and that will actually bring back jihadist elements some hope. They are also expecting more weaponry from their patrons in the Gulf monarchies, and that is really the strategic threat now. I don't think ISIL itself is going to be able to cover this territory on its own without the hidden hands behind them.
Nobody's pretending it's going to be an easy job ahead for the Syrian government army, and the ISIL strongholds, as you said, of Raqqa and Deir el-Zor lay ahead. What intel do we have about those places? What sort of a fight is the Syrian government army going to have?
Well, I think it's important that the Kurdish groups in the north and the Syrian army, Hezbollah, and all the other moderate forces, which unfortunately have been tagged as terrorist groups by some of Western propaganda. The fact is, these are the moderate forces who are now in a position to be able to resist ISIS on the ground, and they need to be supported wholeheartedly. And it's important that for retaking Mosul in Iraq or retaking Raqqa in Syria, the big two centers, urban centers held by ISIS, and some of the hinterland around it, it's important that the entire international community come in one voice. We need an inclusive approach, which has been missing for a long time. And this is actually the fall of Palmyra should be a lesson in Western capitals that it is time to shed their exclusivist approach. It's important to be inclusive, to bring everybody on board, because otherwise it's an existential battle. And it's the same holds true with the, where we need inter-regional cooperation to counter ISIS terrorist attacks, be they happening in Belgium or in Libya or elsewhere. Similarly, on the ground, the battle itself, we need cooperation, we need international cooperation. I think that's the biggest lesson to take away. The Western propaganda has to actually quiet down, because they have spoiled the show in the past and have tried to make it much, much worse and easier for ISIS by dividing the field. But now is the time for unity and to come together. Let us capitalize on Palmyra. Let's now march towards Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa. Let's liberate the whole of Syria from this menace, and then also simultaneously do the job in Iraq. And then we will find political solutions to these problems once we wipe out these terrorists.
Sreeram, just while you're on the line, there's a question I really wanted to ask you, just get thought on. I'm just speaking to the head of antiquities in Syria, who's going to make a beeline there in the next couple of days to try and get a real handle on when the place is safe, the damage done to all those beautiful antiquities there, many of which have been standing for thousands of years while the world's gone on around them. Why did we saw those pictures late last summer of so many beautiful, huge antiquities being razed to rubble, razed to the ground by ISIS? Why did they do it? Why did they do that? Waste the firepower? Was it to shock the civilized world? What were they trying to get at there?
Basically, it's an identity and a culture war. For ISIS, they want to erase the pre-Islamic history and the non-Wahhabi and non-Salafi kind of history of this region, of the Levant. And for them, it was important to smash this, because that way they will argue that they're recreating history, they're erasing nation-state boundaries, and they're taking us back to what they consider to be the imagined, El Dorado of the era of the Prophet. But the reality is that what they have done is a cultural genocide. And in fact, the fact that Palmyra has finally been saved without complete damage is, I think, a liberation. It's truly a day of liberation. We must celebrate what happened today, despite all the losses and the sacrifices. The point is that these artifacts belong to the whole of humanity, and ISIS had really threatened our existence as humankind by attacking these sites, and Russia and the Syrian government and Iran need to be congratulated for doing the job without as much damage to the artifacts.
So as far as the antiquities were concerned, UNESCO calling it a war crime carried out there. That's not overstating it then, no?
Absolutely not. Cultural genocide is a problem, because it means that whether you're killing the Yazidis and doing sexual enslavement of Yazidi women, or you are blowing up monuments in Palmyra, it's the same thing, because living and past are all together, because we are a continuity as a human race. And what ISIS was trying to do was to disrupt this continuity. And it's truly, as I said, a day of liberation. We must thank our stars, heavens. Russian intervention really, frankly, has made a difference today.
Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs, thank you for your time. We'll continue to let you go and enjoy your Sunday. Thank you, sir, on that rather positive note to end.